So last time we were about to find out what was going on. I think we had just entered the room. The quiet was ruined by the sound of a police officer screaming into his phone. He was either confused or just excited because he kept saying the same thing over and over again. Something had happened after all, and something bad enough that he needed backup. That was my chance. If we could get to the scene before the place was overflowed with cops, we might be able to find an unexpected scoop. Yes, there's no doubt about it. I checked, but I can't decide that on my own. No, I told you that's not what's going on. That cop was in the way. Whether we took the stairs or the elevator, we need to go through the lobby to get to them. Huh? Wait. Sarika took me by the arm as if we were a couple and entered the lobby without trying to hide it at all. Hey, come on. She ignored me and walked straight for the stairs. Hey. The cop must have seen us because he yelled at us from behind. Shit. He probably hadn't seen our faces. Should we run? No, that would just make us look suspicious. I told you not to leave your rooms. Yes. No. Sorry. It's okay. Forget that. I need that backup. He started to mumble into the phone. We crossed the lobby without looking back. Don't do anything too crazy.
でもタクの言った通りだったじゃん。ごまかせた。
That scared me. That was a close call. My heart was pounding so loud that the noise was making me sick. Could he not tell that we were high school students? Not even if he saw us from behind, he'd be able to tell by our uniforms. Why didn't he arrest us? Maybe he was panicking so much that the thought never occurred to him.
どうしようか。
Sarika let go of my arm and turned towards me. That's right. Now wasn't the time for thinking about other things. We don't know whether or not that room on the 3rd floor is what we were after, but we should start there. If that doesn't work, we should try other places. Once the police officer's backup arrive, we leave. But from the way that officer was acting, something was definitely up. We need to get photos before we go.
Okay.
It was quiet. The policeman's voice was still drifting up the stairs, but it only made the quiet seem more oppressive. Just like he said, the customers had probably been told not to leave their rooms. It was too late for it to matter now, but I was starting to feel a little scared. Come to think of it, if something had happened, maybe the killer was still there.
そういえばタク、まだのんちゃんと喧嘩しちゃってるんだね。
Sarika's voice was relaxed. I was grateful. I'd take any opportunity to relieve this tension. It wasn't really a fight. No, maybe it was.
でもまだクルスって呼んでるんでしょ？気持ちはわかるけど、なんとかならないかな。
Until half a year ago, I called her Nono, her first name. After the incident that had caused me to leave the dorm, I never called her that again. As long as I kept calling her Kurusu, she'd keep being mad at me. It must have been hurting some important part of her.
タク、
Oh, the next thing I knew, we were on the third floor. Sirika had gotten ahead of me at some point and was poking at her head around the corner into the
誰
hallway.
もいないみたい。
Good. I took out my phone and got ready to record. As soon as I went into the third floor, halfway, I found myself holding my breath. My heart was pounding even louder when Kappa yelled at us. I tried to control myself and looked down the corridor. The rooms must have been very big because the gap between the doors was large. The floor was red, sinking into black as the hallway stretched away. I could hear the unpleasant sounds of blowing air. They must have had the air conditioning on. There were no windows and there wasn't a lot of lights, so the hallway looked pretty creepy, but there was nothing out of the ordinary about it. But still, it was strange. The air felt solid. It felt like someone would jump out from the shadows the second you let your guard down, or perhaps that there were traps scattered everywhere along the floor. For a second, the floor seemed to be stained with blood, but I shook that image out of my mind. What was this? It was like the fear you feel in the darkness at night. Was it just because there was so little light? No, it was worse than that. It felt like someone was watching me and enjoying my unease. It was like they were peering deep into my heart.
タク、
I almost jumped off the ground with a start.
どうしたの？
Don't just talk to me like that. You scare the hell out of me. It's nothing, hey. Isn't this kind of weird? I gestured with my head down in the hall. So Rika looked past me into the darkness.
そりゃ暗いからなんか不気味だけど、雰囲気作りとかじゃないの？
Was it? Was that all? Was I being too sensitive? I tried flipping the light switch on the wall next to me, but nothing happened. Maybe the bulbs were burnt out, or maybe it wasn't the switch for this hallway at all. Damn it. This was 1407 or something. Was that a reference? I turned around. Let's go to tip list. An American horror movie about a hotel room where all the occupants commit suicide based on a work by the master. Yes, Stephen Queen instead of Stephen King. So 1408 was a legendary movie. It came out very shortly after Shrek 3. So that's the reference they're using. They're using 1408. Okay. The only person there was Sarika. No one else was looking at me. I took some time to make sure of it before I spoke. Let's go. Sarika nodded carefully and stayed behind me as we walked deeper into the hallway. I remembered the location of the window I'd seen outside. It was probably deeper in the hall, the furthest one back, or the one before it. It's probably one of those two. I walked as silently as I could down the long hallway towards the last rooms on the left side. With every step I took, I could feel the sensation of the hallway floor through the bottom of my heels. It was like I was being forced to think about nerves that I had never used. My body felt very tense. I didn't see any cops in the hallway. Usually, they at least have one person here at the scene. Was this the wrong floor? We reached the second to last door. Room 306. Ooh, I can have a positive or negative reaction right here. I listened carefully, but I didn't hear anything. Let's have a positive reaction. Just the quiet rumble of the air
覗
conditioning.
き穴とかないの？
Come on. Is there people? This is a love hotel.
ああ、そっか。
Hey, what are you?
ノック。
You can't. And suddenly the door opened. We didn't expect anyone to open it, so both Sakura and I froze. Then they came out.
あら、坊やたちが次のお客さんかしら。
It was voluptuous woman with long hair, and she was completely naked. Not only that, but her body was as nice as any you'd seen in a magazine. Wait, didn't she look a lot like a model or actress I saw on TV?
あ、たくん、見ちゃダメ。
かわいいお客さんね。入って。
Oh, no.
そういうんじゃないんで。
いいのよ。お嬢さんも一緒でも。
In other words, what exactly?
すっごく気持ちよくさせてあげる。だから、おいで。
たくん、どうしよう。
Why do you look like you want to go inside?
だって。
Sarika's face was red with embarrassment. She whispered softly,
気持ちよくなりたいし。
That's not what we're here for. Something was wrong with me.
そんな状況って？
What's not what we're here for? I said what I was thinking out loud. No, it's nothing. Rika was still knocking on the door to the room 306, but no one was answering. See, he was just thinking all of that. None of that actually happened, but he was thinking it. The police aren't here either. Maybe it's not this floor. I flinched back at the sudden noise. Was that the sound of breaking glass? It was from the next room over, right? She was clinging to my back in surprise with her hands on my shoulders.
多分奥でしょ。
Sarika pointed to the next room. We stood there for a moment. The violent sounds must have scared her because Sarika easygoing mood had totally vanished. But we waited a while, and nothing more happened. There was no more voices or sounds. The hallway was never the same as always. But was I imagining it, or was the hall a little darker than before? Should we go back? So Rika didn't answer my question. She didn't seem afraid, but she had a serious look on her face as she stared down the hallway. Maybe something had happened. The killer was still there. No, wait, I needed to think about this rationally. There was an officer on the floor who called for backup. Usually when a call came in, the police never came there alone. There was always more. I'd find out that myself during my report, so I was sure of it. So there had to be another officer at the scene. The killer couldn't just be hiding there. If there was any chance of that, the cops wouldn't have just told us to go back to our rooms. Did the killer break the glass during the struggle? No, that didn't make sense either. If there was any chance of them being able to do that, would that officer have gone downstairs? He'd probably gone down there to tell the front desk not to let anyone else in. I had no proof, but it should be okay. More than anything, I hadn't taken any photos yet. Oh, I jumped literally when I heard the sound. It's a very strange sound. It didn't belong here at all. I looked and saw Sarika had gotten so nervous she had taken out Froggy Goro's strap. She had to play with it. She probably didn't even know she was doing it. I softly poked her with my elbow. I mentioned her to keep quiet. She seemed confused, but then she realized what she was doing. Quickly put the strap back into her pocket. Quickly as I looked down the hall once more, all the way to the front of the room. We should go ahead there. I tried to still myself, then checked over my shoulder. I was afraid of making even the slightest sound. Sarika followed me wordlessly, with her hand on my shoulder. I grabbed her hand with my free hand. The other was holding my smartphone. She squeezed it tight. The feeling of her fingers kept me strong as I walked forward. The next room. Room 305. The room at the far end. Just like 306, it had a plain old door, but it felt like it was exuding an intense pressure.
ここからだよね。
She was asking about the sound. I think so. I answered. Despite not having any proof at all, we waited and still heard nothing. I looked around once more to make sure no one was there, then put my ear up against the door. Then I heard a small sound. It was the sound that I'd heard outside, the sound from the window, like a music box playing. It was relaxed, peaceful, even if we weren't to play the same tune over and over. This is the room. Sarika was looking at me.
開く?
No, that's... I hesitated. She put her hand on the doorknob.
ダメ.
Nope. She seemed relieved but a little upset. I know exactly how she felt. I felt the same way. I moved away from the door. I would have liked to take some photos before I left, but... Huh?
今、
Did you
鍵の
just
音しなか
hear
っ
the
た?
sound of a lock? Yeah. That was what it sounded like. We were too confused to move. There was no sign of anyone coming out. I slowly touched the doorknob. It turned. The door was unlocked. How? What? This is a bad idea. As if I guided by all the strange things that were happening, I pushed the record button on my smartphone. I gripped the doorknob tighter. A voice in my mind told me to stop, to go back, but it wiped out by the sound of the smartphone recording starting and the door slowly opening. The more it opened, the less I was able to ignore my curiosity. It felt like something besides Sarika was pushing me towards as I opened the door. The song was playing in a dimly lit room. All the lights were off, but the sun outside was streaming through the window. Opened the window. The light was very weak. The curtain in front of me, which parted off a part of the room, was blocking the light. I gulped and realized my lips were dry. I ran my tongue over them to wet them a little, and then I realized my heart was pounding. The sound was so loud, I thought my heart might have somehow moved up into my ears. It seemed to be beating out some bizarre rhythm. It's making me sick. I forced myself to swallow my saliva, hoped it would keep me from throwing up. Then, I took a slow step forward. I held my phone to record what I was seeing, and then I realized something. The curtain wasn't partitioning the room. It was a bed. There was a raised spot off the floor. The circular bed surrounded by a curtain. The light was streaming out from behind. The windows we'd seen were on the other side of it. The song seemed to be coming from there. Crap, it was too dark. I went to flip the nearby light switch, then forced myself to stop. No, I couldn't touch anything in the room. Some kind of crime must have taken place here. I was too scared to go any deeper into the darkness. My shoes made my steps loud sound. There was no response, only the relaxed melody. I gave a signal who was still behind me and went deeper into the room. What? For a moment, I thought I heard the sound of creaking metal. Felt like I was hearing it between the gaps in the music box melody. There was no change that I could see. No one jumped out, nothing was moving. There was just the sound of a music box. I looked from one part of the room to another to make sure nothing was amiss. And then I slowly moved forward. Dude, I would have left. Oh my goodness. Someone was lying on the floor. When my eyes adjusted in the room, I saw a police officer and a woman. The officer was lying against the bathroom, and with his legs sprayed with his head drooping, the girl was lying on the floor face down. They showed no signs of noticing us. No, that wasn't right. The glass behind them was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Crap. The second I understood what was going on, the hand holding the smartphone started to shake. Crap, crap, crap! I could see a little blood dripping off the police officer's head. I spun around as I heard the sound. The warmth drained from my face in an instant, and my whole body shivered. Someone was sitting on the bed. I staggered back and slammed into Sarika. Let's get out of here now. But I couldn't move. My hand was frozen as it pointed the smartphone towards wherever it was behind the curtain, and it wasn't doing what I told it. I stepped back, tripped, and then it fell to the floor. My lungs weren't working right. The silhouette moved a little, and it flinched. It didn't move. The bed was rotating. Whoever was behind this curtain showed no signs of noticing us. They didn't budge an inch. What the hell is going on here? Sarika's voice sounded like it was far away. I ran back to the entrance and slammed myself into the door. It wasn't opening. Why won't it open? I don't know. Rika yelled back at me. So Rika screamed as she slammed against the door. I helped her try to batter it down. It didn't work. It was like trying to battering down a wall. Suddenly I heard a knock at the door. I jumped away without thinking. Oh, this is what happened last time. The first victim knocked on the door a couple times, and then he knocked back. It's just a knock at the door. My whole body started to shake. Someone was on the other side. Someone was knocking. It definitely wasn't the police. As if my sanity were blowing away, melting out, the soles of my feet. No, don't open that door. Right, go back. Let's use the window. I grabbed Sarika's hand and ran to the back of the room. I fell silent. What I saw, huh? What was that? The curtain was open. There was a man sitting there. No, he was slowly moving. The bed was moving in time to the sound of the music box. The wire wrapped around his neck. Aye! The wire was hanging down from the ceiling, choking him. His face was all puffed up and a color I'd never seen before. His hands were wet and the stain extended to the bed itself. The smell... Wow. This wasn't alive. He was dead. What the hell was this? Why was he dead? Did he suffocate? What was the curtain open? What the hell was he doing? Why was he dead? My hand not realizing it. Huh? I needed to use the window to escape, but I pointed my phone at the camera and the body instead. The body... Each time it went around, the wire made an awful sound, dug deeper into his neck. It had dug in so deep by now, the man's neck was the size of my wrist. The skin must have broke because it was bleeding a little. What am I doing? Next to me, her voice sounded far away, but she was like through a telephone. I needed to get out of here, but I couldn't stop filming. Why was I doing this? Why was he dead? The wires dug deeper and deeper. The body turned away from me. I could see the back of his neck, the flesh around the... I heard a muffled sound like something hard snapping inside my back. The head slumped just a little. His neck had just broken. They had just been seeing the sound of a breaking neck. Let's get out of here. I could hear her voice. Get out of here? Get out of... That's right, I need to get out of here. My body moved as I heard another sound. I spun around. I screamed. Then I heard something from behind me. I don't know what I did, but the next thing I knew, my whole field of vision had turned red. Then I felt something like a ball hit me. Before I could understand what it was, everything faded to black. Did I just die? September 30th, 2015. midnight. Oh, that was the man that was in the middle. Sonjo, we managed to ID the victim from his positions in the security cameras. His name was Hironori Kakati, 22 years old, a Shibuya resident with a part-time marketing job. A part-time at Koshin? Any lover? No roommates either. He lived alone, it seems. Shit. Sonjo? if he was single and not in a relationship, it would take time to figure out his private life. Koshin was in one of the companies that had profited from the most to recovery projects in recent years. Part-timer or not, if you worked there, it was probably pretty busy. It was possible that his coworker knew his name and nothing else about who he was outside of work. What do we tell the media? There's two kids we found at the scene who said they'd hit. There's two kids who found at the scene who said they were with Ho newspaper club. They've calmed down and they're still not making a lot of sense. The other girl doesn't have anything they would tell us she is. We're checking if she's a friend. Also, hey, you can't just... This is Watabe from the Niyakanya News. Excuse me, what's going on here? Get out. You can't come in without permission. Just a brief comment. Sojo's men physically dragged the reporter. He had to tell himself from putting his hands to his head and moaning. He couldn't let his men see him acting weak. Sojo had been with the police HQ Sector 1 for less than 7 years. He didn't get along with his superiors. He managed to beg his way into being in charge of this case. Maybe this was his way of avenging the death of an older detective. Once you're done looking at the window frame, make sure it can't be seen from outside. There's no telling what those net reporters will do. I'll talk to forensics myself. Oh, and put some more manpower into checking his connections at work. What about those kids? I'll handle them too. Get to it. His men race out of the room. They had never had a case like this before, and they're probably getting pretty excited. So was Sojo, to be honest. The whole thing was such a mess, he didn't even know where to begin. His detective instincts were screaming at him to start doing the work needed to find the killer. Okay. His call was answered on the first ring. It's me. I'm sorry. Sojo apologized without thinking and for no clear reason. He always felt like a naughty child when he spoke to the CEO. I've got no intentions of copying their habits. Momose, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. Sojo cut her off before she could continue her lecture and gave her a brief description of the scene. This was a violation of the rules, but the only way to solve a crazier case was to be a little crazy yourself. There was the first thing he'd learned from an older detective. Momose asked her question. After he described the situation, she cut it. We're not sure right now. The hotel had gotten suspicious when Kekita had never come down after checking out time. When more than 10 calls to the room went unanswered, they contacted police. 2 officers, as well as someone from the hotel, had gone to the room. One officer stayed at the scene to keep it secure, and the other searched the hotel to make sure it was safe. During the search, he had forgotten to lock the employee entrance in the back near the stairs. That was how the two students had gotten in. Shortly after he left the room, the girl woke up and started strangling the officer, he hit his head on the edge of the glass window and knocking himself out. He was going to be fine, but he had been out cold until backup arrived. When the backup got there, they found the girl unconscious on the floor. A boy was passed out on the floor too, and the girl from Kiko was thrown up, also on the floor. Kakita's cause of death was strangulation. The wire around his neck was kind used at a construction site. It had been hung in an X pattern from the lights on the ceiling. He'd been sitting on the bed as it rotated. That's why there was so much pressure on his neck. From the examined time of death, the body on the bed kept spinning in time, one rotation every time. In the end, the man's head had been cut off completely. The problem was the girl in the room. There was no indication that she had ever touched. There were no fingerprints or any other signs that she had touched the bed or the wire. The only thing they found under her fingernails were skin and blood from the officer she strangled. In fact, there was no indication she touched much of anything in the room. Everything they found belonged to Kikita. According to the officer she strangled, when she attacked him, she'd clearly been in an unstable psychological state. Her eyes were bloodshot and out of focus. Soldier scratched his head and he heard her sum up the situation. That was what it looked like, at least from what they knew right now. Just going on that, it sure to look like a suicide, but it was all too strange. It seemed like it was pretty traumatic for them, so at first they wouldn't say anything, but now they're starting to talk. But they're from Hikiko. That place has some issues. He checked with the school and verified that they were part of the school's newspaper club. The security camera at the rear entrance had seen them coming in, which matched with their testimony. But he didn't know what to make of their testimony, that the door had opened on its own, or that someone else had tried to come into the room. The door was equipped with an automatic lock, and the only person inside the room who could have opened the door was that girl. But there was no signs of her fingerprints on the door. The security camera in the hallway showed no signs of anyone else trying to go in. In any event, it was extremely rare for a civilian to see a dead body outside of a funeral. In unstable mental state, it was extremely easy to imagine things or just outright to be mistaken about what was going on. They turned out to not have any relationship to Kakita or the girl. He planned on letting them off with a stern warning. Our biggest lead in the girl is in the room and she's not talking. She's probably going to be put under psychiatric hold at this rate, right? Let's find out what that is. Here used to refer to the act of keeping someone in custody in a designated location such as a mental hospital chosen by the police until their psychological state has normalized. Okay, well, let's go kosher. Okay, cool. Yeah, but that will slow down the investigation a lot, so I'd rather not go to that route.
っと情報を回させてちょうだい。多分新庄ちゃんの立場的に無理してもらうことになるから覚悟はしといてね。3分後にこっちからかけ直すから。
Okay, thanks, I appreciate it. Sojo went to hang up the phone.
ちょっと
Yeah?
そういえばお願いがあるのよ。絶対に新庄ちゃんのためにもなることなんだけど、聞いてくれないかしら。
So it was basically an order. Then Sojo thought so to himself. What is
この
it?
件に関して私より詳しいうちの子が一人いるの。それで今回の現場を直接見たいって言ってるんだけど、お願いできない？
You want me to let an outsider into
い
the
つだ
crime
って
scene?
物事を解決するヒントを与えるのは部外者よ。
After all, I'm an outsider too, she continued. In his head, Sojo went over the steps. He'd have to take time and to required to take them. Can it be tomorrow or no, the
さ
day
すが
after?
新庄ちゃん、話せるじゃない？よくそれで堅物揃いの捜査一課に残れてるわね。
Alright, talk to you later.
ちょっと新庄ちゃん、
He barely stopped himself from ending the call. Is there something
念の
else?
ためアドバイスをしとこうと思って2つね。言っておくけど、さっきのは冗談じゃないのよ。
Huh?
チャランポランで行きなさいっていうやつよ。これから間違いなく新庄ちゃんの理解の外にある事件が続くわよ。その時一番邪魔になるのは常識だから気をつけ。
I'll make sure to remember that.
そこで真面目に返事しているようではまだまだね。もう一つはね、
The other thing is, Momose paused for a second and chuckled.
うちの子に取って食われないようにね。油断してると新庄ちゃんが部外者になりかねないわよ。
September 30th, 2015. Hey, did you see that thing on
ああ
Twitter?
壁砲ボットのネタ画像でしょ。でっかいウーパがドヤ顔して光るように座って渋谷も変わったとか言ってる。
Oh yeah, that meme from Hikihoba, a giant Upa from a smug on his face, sitting on the Shibuya Haikarigo and saying, Shibuya sure has been changed, Shibuya. Yeah, but that's really kind of sad. Could we use that at the cultural festival? Nobody's gonna look at a display about the history of Shibuya recovery anyway.
画像だけじゃ弱くない？なんかぬいぐるみとか実際に置かないと。
The mill started the search through Shibuya's stores with a smartphone. He must have found something strange because he kept mumbling, "No way!" And you know what? We just got back. And this is where I think this is a good time for a break. So we're just gonna end it here, guys. We'll find out what we're gonna do back at the school next time.